Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel, Jchenelle. I'm Janae, and today I'm going to be giving you guys a few tips and tricks that I learned while installing these crochets on myself the past few times and on my clients. As some of you all know, I am a licensed cosmetologist, so I've been doing a lot of crochets on my clients as well as myself, and I've learned a few things along the way, and I want to share all of the things that I've learned with you guys. So I'm going to give you all of my little secrets and things that I've learned, but before we get into that, you need to make sure that you're subscribed to my channel so that way you can be notified every time I post a video. So click down below on the notification button and the subscription button. It's red and a bell. You can't miss it. So go ahead and click on those right now. Alright, now let's get into the video. So as I said before, I have learned a few different things while doing these crochets and I want to share them with you. So I'm going to go ahead and get started and get on with the steps. So let's get on with the first tip. The first thing that I wrote down was initial styling. So that includes things like braiding pattern, separating the curls, so on and so forth. So for my hair, since it's so fine, I didn't like the idea of braiding all the way to the front because I knew that the front of my hair would not be able to handle the weight of the crochet hair. So what I did in the first one is did half up, half down, which I'll include a picture either here or here. And then the second one, which is the one I did the video on, I did two puffs up here, and you'll see those in a second when I take my bonnet off. But you know, you want to be considerate of what your hair can handle when you're installing these. If you have really fine hair, I wouldn't suggest braiding up to the hairline unless you're going to add hair in. Another option is also to have leave out. Of course, that makes the style not as protective because you are having to manipulate your hair by either rod setting it or twisting it with a crochet to get the two textures to match. But as long as you don't use a lot of heat or any heat at all, you should be okay. But if you're wanting to do crochets so that you don't have to actually touch your hair at all, I wouldn't do leave out. I would either do some kind of half up, half down style, or either add hair in if your hair is fine. If your hair is thick, then you really shouldn't have a problem with it. Another thing that I've noticed too is that it's kind of hard to get the hairline to look real. So that's another reason why I didn't want to braid all the way up, because I didn't want any knots to be visible. I wanted it to look like it was my hair. And I know synthetic hair and crochets, it's not necessarily as believable as, you know, a sew-in or something like that, but I want it to always look believable at all times. So, you know, leave out and things are an option. Of course is not as protective, but it does look a lot more realistic whenever you have a very defined part. Even if you're doing the invisible part method, it's still not quite as perfect as your own hair. So also you want to consider the braiding pattern. So you want the braids to not be too big or too small, and you don't want them too loose or too tight. So typically the bigger the hair that you're crocheting, the looser your braids need to be, and the smaller the hair, the tighter your braids should be. If you try to do some twists or braids with crochet hair, or do a very thick texture hair like what I did the second time, your braids need to be looser because you need to have enough space to put the crochet hook in and pull that hair through. You don't want it to be too tight or it will be very painful to, number one, get it through, and it'll be lifting that braid up more because the hair under it is bigger. Now conversely, if you're doing a finer texture hair, the braid should be tighter so that way the braid is not too loose to secure that knot for the fine hair. So you want to consider what type of hair you're using to determine what size, how tight your braid should be. And then also your braid should not be, you shouldn't have too many of them, but you also shouldn't have too few of them either. That will all depend on the size of your head and how thick your hair is. If your hair is really, really thick, you probably will need to do more braids, because if the braids are too bulky, they won't lay flat, and your foundation needs to be flat so that way your head doesn't look really big after you crochet them. On the other end, if your hair is fine, then you want to do bigger braids and possibly even add hair in so that way you have enough hair to support the weight of the crochet hair so that things aren't slipping out. You also want to make sure that you are making the hair look as real as possible. So like just an example, crochet hair usually comes like perfectly defined, kind of like this. This is the hair that I used on my video last. It's, you know, perfectly defined. This is probably like a twist out type of curl. This is great, but no one's hair looks like this after they take a twist out. There's always going to be some sort of frizz. It looks more like this. This is like what a typical person's twist out looks like. You know, it's got a little bit of frizz. You know, some piece might be perfectly defined, but then other pieces have a little bit of frizz. Oh, sorry. And that is what makes it believable. You want it to look like real hair. So you kind of have to manipulate this a little bit. Even if you just like run your fingers down it, which is pretty much what I did on my hair. Just run it down and look, that automatically separated it. It just separated on its own. And then you don't need to touch any more of it. You don't need to keep on separating it, because over time it will get fluffier and it will get a little bit frizzier. If you get a poor quality hair, it won't be a good frizz. So make sure you're getting a decent quality hair when you're doing crochets, because it does make a difference. Like not all frizz is good frizz, and you don't want it to get out of control. You still want there to be some definition in there. So you know, kind of kink it up a little bit so that way it looks like, you know, hair. Like this, a head full of this looks a lot more realistic than a head full of that. You know, there's a difference. And when you spread it apart like that, it takes up more surface area. It takes up more surface area. Hold on. Okay. So that you don't need to use as much hair. So this is one, these are both one, but look how much more room that takes up. So this will help you not use as much hair. You also want to make sure that you space it further apart at the bottom than you do at the top, because if you add too much hair, it will look way too big and no one can really see the bottom. So as long as you have just a few pieces evenly spaced out, the top, which is where you're going to want most of the hair to fall, so that way it covers everything up, it'll match. You also want to make sure that you cut it into layers so that it has a nice rounded shape as opposed to like a Christmas tree type shape. So if you don't know how to do that, if you don't know how to cut them yourself, then I would suggest you go to a licensed beautician, someone who knows how to cut layers in, because the shape will also make a big difference. It naturally layers itself if you're using the same length because it's going up your head, but you still want somebody to go in there and shape it and make sure that all the pieces look like a real haircut. That makes a huge difference as well. So that is it for the initial styling portion. So let's move on to the second tip. Okay, for the second tip, I'm finally going to take my bonnet off because I wanted to go over how I go to sleep and then how I, you know, refresh this in the morning. So literally all I do in the morning is take the bonnet off, and as you can see, everything's pretty flat. It's flat in the back, and that's because I've been laying on it. And here's the other side. So I take my little two pieces out, and then I shake my head back and forth, just like that. And you can already see how that loosened it up and made it bigger. And then I just take my hands and I just kind of shake it. And I'm looking in the mirror when I do this, just to kind of see if the shape looks good. You really don't have to do a lot. So that's pretty much as I'm gonna shake it. Then I take a small hand mirror with another mirror behind me, and I look at my reflection in this mirror into that mirror, and then I can see my head bigger, and I just look for holes. So I would look on this side and I would check to see if there was any holes to where you could see any parts. Then I would move on to the back section, check it. If there are, then I would move it around, and then I would do the same thing to this side, and I would move it around. Then after I do that, I go around again and check and make sure that the shape overall looks well. I don't really mess with this front part a lot maybe every couple days I'll take this fake part off, because this isn't my hair either. I'll take this fake part off and smooth everything down. I'll put like some shea butter and gel and, you know, water on it again. But because this is a protective style, I don't want to do a lot to it. So this would be a day that I would really not do much to it. So all I'm going to do is just take a little bit of rose water and spray around the perimeter. And then just take a little bit of oil to lock that moisture in, just like a few drops, and I would just go around. Rose water, I've heard some good things about it and I like it. It's different than regular water. So it's not as, I guess it's not as wet. That's really hard to explain, that it's not as wet, but it's like, it's just a little bit of moisture. My hair reverts pretty quickly, so I like it. And then I just kind of either take a little comb like that. And then that's it. That's all I do. I don't like to do a whole lot, like I said, because this is a protective style, so I don't want to be messing with my hair too much. These are like right past the 2-week mark, so as you can see, they're looking, you know, they're looking pretty good. Like, this looks like somebody's twist out, and you can see how, like I said, I've separated these curls a little bit, so it's got some definition, but it's also got some frizz, and this is what a normal person's 2-week-old twist out would look like. So that is, you know, when you do the hair the right way, it looks very believable. So that's how I take it down. At night, I just wrap these pieces around like that so they're not in the way. And then I just put my bonnet back on like so, and that's it. So that's all I do to wake up and go to sleep. You can tie a scarf on your head if you want to, but I just prefer the bonnet. So that is it for the second step, how to sleep and refresh in the morning. Now let's move on to the third step. Okay, so the third tip or step that I have is maintenance. So depending on the type of hair, you may need to wet it a little bit. I've had some clients tell me for their hair that I put in that's like a looser type of body wave or like a deep wave texture, they spray it like every few days with just a little bit of water, and then they just kind of run it down just to smooth out the top. They don't really do much to the bottom. They just kind of leave that alone. I've also heard of people who use just a little bit of mousse to kind of bounce those curls back, and that's only if they get, you know, super frizzy. I don't do any of that to this. All I do is moisturize my scalp. So I'll take oil that's in an applicator bottle, just like this, and I'll spread the hair apart where the braid is and put it down like that. And I'll do that all to each row, and I'll do it kind of up the middle here, and then just put a few dots in here. And that is all I do for maintenance. And like I said, this is like going a little past 2 weeks, and everything looks good. My scalp feels good. It's not super itchy. Everything is going okay. If you do this, then your scalp will feel good. Everything will feel clean, and your crochets will last for a decent amount of time. So that is going to lead us into our fourth step. So let's get on to the fourth tip. So the fourth tip is, how long do these last? Crochets can last 4 weeks up to 6 weeks, depending on how often you need to wash your scalp, and, you know, just how often you want to keep them in, and how diligent you are with your maintenance. If you keep these up, they can last 4 to 6 weeks. If you want to take them out sooner, you can. There's no rule that says you have to leave them in that long. I am about to take mine out this week. It's been about 2 weeks, and they could have lasted longer, but I didn't do this on freshly washed hair. I had another crochet in before this for like a couple weeks. So now I'm getting like to the month mark, and I typically shampoo my hair every 2 weeks. So my scalp is getting to where it's like, okay, it's time to shampoo me, clean me off. So it has been technically a month with having crochets in. I just had 2 different ones in. So these can last up to 4 weeks. Most of my clients say they cut them out right around 4 weeks. And if you watch my tutorial of how I did these, you can see how I cut out the ones I had in before these. It's really easy. All you do is pull the hair out and cut it. This is all synthetic hair and your hair is braided. So if you did a good braiding pattern and didn't leave any hairs out, then you shouldn't cut any of your hair off in the de-installation process. So those are all the tips that I have. Let me know if you like this video and if you like these instructional type videos, or if you like more tutorials. I'm going to be putting some more fashion stuff on because I've had some more time to do a little bit of sewing and things. So I'm trying to, you know, switch it up and get a little variety in my channel so that it appeals to a large variety of people. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Also make sure to comment down below if you liked it and let me know what other videos you would like to see. Come back again, and thanks for watching. Bye.